must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning into Voices from Afar. And I am your host, Bill Demarest. And
I am a traveler of both time and space, to be where I have been, sit with elders of the generation, top of days, through which they sit and wait, all will be revealed.
And some of those elders' voices I've brought along with me today are Star, Joy, Scottish John, and or Claire.
Largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world. Who knows?
We know. And that's why we're here fighting against the propaganda machine run by the powers that should not be. And just never fear or give up hope. And you will find no fear-mongering here, only the truth, and a bit of humor to help you keep your sanity in a world that's lost its mind.
I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. I take you to burn. Fire. I'll take you to learn. I'll see you burn. You fought hard and you saved and earned, but all of it's gone to burn. And you burned your time and burned, you know you. It's about how's it time and burn your mind, you fall back to all behind. Oh no. You're gonna burn. Fire to destroy all you've done. Fire to end all your I'll feel you burn.
And greetings and welcome to another edition of Voices from Afar here on Truth Frequency Radio, where we can also be heard on iHeartRadio. And that little ditty, I hope it wasn't too cheesy for our guest. Our guest is Larry Buck Hunter, but before I get to him, I'd like to say hello to Joy. How are you today, Joy?
Bill, I'm fine today, Bill, and I'm excited to hear our conversation with Larry. And how are you doing today, Star? Sorry.
What did you just call me?
Spring.
Well, my girlfriend, I just talked to her. Her name's Spring. I'm so sorry.
No,
She's
that's
my
fine.
hairdresser.
I've been called worse. It's all good. I'm doing well. Thank you. Things are going good. I had to go to work today, and that went pretty fast, and it's good. And Steph cooked me dinner, and yeah, it's not raining. It's good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited about this talk with Larry. So, Bill, how are you this evening?
Excellent, and better than could be ever expected or dreamt of, having lived in hell for 60 years to get where I am today. And our guest today is Larry Buck Hunter, and he's going to share with us his experience of 7 days in hell, and just such a fantastic person to speak to. I spoke to him yesterday on the phone, and we had a pre-show chat before the show today, and just an incredible man and an incredible spirit. So, Larry, how are you this evening?
I am absolutely Exus. I'm coming to you from the great state of Idaho, in particularly Boise, Idaho.
Boise. Slowly I turn, step by step.
Lots of taters. Lots of taters.
That's a Three
Yep.
Stooges routine. So, Larry, start at the beginning. It's just so incredible that you found yourself in prison. At what age was that? And give us a little detail on why God foresaw you to see hell personal on a really real level. It's freaking me out because I know Larry's story and it really is incredible. So Larry, it's you.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that I had built a very, very large international company factory. We're in 116 countries. Through a very strange set of events, we got in trouble with the SEC. And then that strange set of events turned to another strange set of events. And after about 2.5, 3 years and about $3-4 million in legal fees, I finally cut a deal with the federal government so that nobody else would be involved. And I got the great event of getting to see what the other side of the fence was like. I'd been ministering for years to prisons, and so on in January of 2010, particularly January 8th, I pulled up to the front gate of the prison in Florence, Colorado. It's a prison camp. They have 3 different prisons there. One's called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It's the most secure prison in the world. And my son-in-law dropped me off. I self-reported. And just like reporting to the service, walked in the gate, went through all their malarkey that you go through from the bend over, crack a smile, bare butted naked, all that kind of stuff. And finally got to settle in a dormitory, and everything was going along kind of smoothly. And I kept hearing a phrase. People would just, you'd do something and say, well, why don't you just go to hell? And, that type of scowling. And a lot of times it wasn't joking. I mean, it was imminent anger. So, and one of my friends who I attended the chapel there with made a remark, because I had retorted back to one of these guys, said, hell ain't a place you want to go. It's real, and I wouldn't be joking around. And so he came out from the chapel and he said, the chaplain wants you to do the message next Sunday on hell, since you know so much about it. So I sit down and through the help of my family on the outside, I got a lot of scriptures and situations in the John MacArthur ministry. He had a lot of information. So I wrote a sermon called, So You Do Want to Go to Hell, Huh? And that sermon was so impactful that 38 men decided that they would become a Christian during that service, and then I was asked to repeat it several times. Well, I had experienced heaven a couple times in my life through earlier experiences of, I was in an auto accident and had my brain just blew open, and I was in a coma for 17 days. And during that coma, I actually visited heaven. And then on another time. And so I knew about heaven. So I particularly asked God if he would show me. Well, I went on a 40-day, seriously, a 40-day water only fast, just like Jesus did, just like Moses did. And you had to get permission, because if you don't eat food in prison, then you can get thrown in what's known as the hole for like a food strike or a protest. So I got written permission from the chaplain. And during this, one of the things I asked God for was an absolute way to experience hell for myself so that I could relate it to other people. And that was my prayer. Well, one night around 1 a.m., I went into, I would say, a deep coma because I don't know whether I left my body, whether I was still in it. I have no idea, but I know spiritually I arrived in hell. And the one thing and the first thing, guys, that I found out, hell is governed by fear. What does it say? The kingdom of heaven operates on faith. Hell operates on fear. In particularly, your fear or my fear. And my fear is I have one of falling off of a building or being imprisoned and buried alive in a coffin. And I experienced both immediately. And that's where it all began. I was in this dark, awful, awful, awful place that, somebody asked me a few minutes ago about, fire. It is dry heat. It is so hot and dry heat. It's like a blast furnace, but you don't see any flames. There's no, the sight actually, because all your senses work, but it's not like we see as human beings. And, I began there, and for 7 full days and full nights. Now, the only reason I say 7 is because the Holy Spirit told me that they were going to allow me to have a 24-hour structure. But see, in eternity, there is no structure. Time is not like we know it on a 24-hour clock with the sun. It's infinity. It's forever. There is no measure of time. But so I could relate this story, I had a measure of time. And that's where it began.
Yeah, and that's something we understand too. Time is not linear, and 7 days could happen in a minute and a half. And Larry, I am sorry. Once again, as I say, I'm an amateur, and I forgot to mention your book, which is 7 Days in Hell, correct?
That is absolutely correct, and I don't fault you for that. I'm not really even trying to sell books. I give my books away. I've given away hundreds and hundreds of them. In fact, just before this interview, 3 minutes before, I got a call from the Twin Falls, Idaho County Jail. One of the ministers there wanted me to send up 5 books to the jail. And so I appreciate you mentioning that fact. Was it Joy or Star that asked me what hell sounded like? I forget which of the gals asked.
Well, either way, what describe to everybody what it sounded like to you? What did you hear?
Well,
what did you sense?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Hopefully you can hear this. I went to a sound engineer, a good friend of mine, and I wanted to recreate the sound that I heard in hell. I'm going to attempt to play it. Let me know if it's only like 15 seconds long. So let's see if this comes across okay.
Wow.
Now that's a recreation of what I remembered the sounds and the horror and it's a horrifying thing. I mean, it's you talk about horror movies. This is a movie you don't want to live, and this movie lasts for eternity. It doesn't matter how much you scream, holler, yell, you're not heard. And the stint, I don't know whether you've ever smelled death, but it's the most rotten thing you could smell, and that stint was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about the stench.
I just can't, I even stutter about, and I enjoy doing these radio shows, but mentally I start reliving this and it really gets you going, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I got goosebumps from that sound effect. That's pretty. One thing I wanted to ask: could you breathe, or were you constantly trying to breathe, or it must be horrible?
Yeah. Well, remember, this is a spiritual experience, but all five senses are working. And yes, you would breathe, but it was like breathing in soot and dark smoke, and every breath was just inflamed with heat. You know, some people say, "Oh, you're BSing me." Well, you know, just go to the Bible and look at the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And it explains that pretty good about the gulf and how the rich man is asking just for one drop of water to touch his tongue because of the amount of heat and ugliness that, it's just, it's ugly. You don't want to experience. And you know, not that I want to get preachy, but we all have a choice. Life is choice. The choice is already made, but in a religious sense of word, accepting Jesus Christ as his payment for our sin, you know, takes you out of that realm into a new creation so that you never have to experience that. The choice is yours. It's there, and it's so easy. You know, people, I try to explain this a lot to the people in prison. This ain't about smoking, chewing, drinking, cussing, or going like we used to say in girls who do. It has nothing to do with that. It's a choice of accepting a free gift so you don't have to experience the eternity of hell, that you experience the eternity of heaven. And some of the sounds that I heard and recalling was, you know, you could hear people screaming out, just help me, help me. And there was no help. It was just more sounds and groans and shrieks and fear, just fear compounding, fear and more fear. And I just say that over and over. It just compounds. And you think you've got, you think you got a handle on it, but you haven't. It just comes back, the heat and the blackness, and it's intolerable. It's again, I want to explain, it's like a scalding hot blackness, and you feel like you're suffocating. I mean, that's what you feel. You ask about breathing. That's what you feel. And then you feel fear and more fear and anything that your mind can imagine. You subjectively, it doesn't matter. My fear, I was constantly falling, and I was clawing at a coffin and trying to get out, and that was amplified a million more times than it is my sitting right here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you are welcome to get preachy if you wish. Tell it, brother, because we have been known to get there too. And, you know, you get a few people ask you, why all the God thing, Bill? Well, the truth is we are here to spread the truth. So you can get as preachy as you like. I can't imagine this is one of my biggest fears, as I told you, is dying on a desert. That's the only fear I actually have, is dying on a desert. And if that isn't the doorway to hell, I don't know what is. But yeah, I imagine 7 days struggling to breathe this hot soot. It scares me. And here's the thing, one other point I wanted to make. You know, I don't wish hell on anybody, but I'll tell you what, there are certain people running this world. There are certain pedophile, satanic ritual abuse, SOBs, and those that just send children out to be cannon fodder. They certainly deserve it. And I hope your message can get to some of these people and they do turn around.
Well, let me say that like Forrest Gump. Let me say that about that. When I got saved as a Christian, that was on September 15th or the 16th. It was in I'd spent the whole night talking to a preacher, my wife and I, and I accepted Christ. I didn't even realize I had a vast library. Folks, I had a tested IQ of 178. I used to belong to the Society of Geniuses until one day a waitress said to me when I was at a meeting and I was trying to get her to pay for my coffee, and she says, well, let me tell you something about being a genius. If you don't put down 50 cents in a tip for that cup of coffee, you're going to find your rear end, your genius rear end, she said, back there washing dishes. So at that point, I quit taking myself seriously.
It's a humbling experience.
Yeah. And I went home and my wife pulled out like 14 Bibles out of my library. I went on a 5-year, the reason I said that about my mind, I'm very inquisitive. I had to absolutely know. I needed to know why somebody that wasn't a Christian would go to hell, because I thought being good, you could earn your way there. After 5 years, and I studied every known religion. Now this was like 50 years ago, because I turned 70 this year. But at that time I studied every known religion known to man. And here was my conclusion after studying that. Every known religion except for Christianity is men or man trying to justify their existence to a God or an unknown God. Christianity is the only religion that God rejustified man whom he created to himself through the redemption of his son, Jesus Christ. And when you get that, when you really get that, on understanding that, it's pretty simple to understand. But it took me 5 years to come to that conclusion. And even the Bible says, because I had this really hard question, what about the deepest, darkest place in Africa to where no evangelist or Catholic priest or anybody that went to these countries, what about them? Why would they go to hell? And the Bible says all you have to do is look at the sunset and watch the earth, and you will mentally understand that there was a creator. And that is a scripture. And so that answered that question. And so I was well satisfied with the road that I was now on, that Christianity was real. But it's not religion. That's what I keep trying to, it's not a denomination. It's not being a Baptist or a Nazarene. It's an acceptance of Jesus, acknowledging that he was the Son of God, that he was an appropriation or died in place of us. And so it was empty. Look, when I accepted Jesus Christ, I'll tell you what my prayer was. I looked up. Now my wife she was sitting over there crying, and I was really embarrassed because there's a macho guy sitting there, and because she asked the Lord to come into her heart, and finally I just looked up at the ceiling like I was addressing God, and I said, if you really are real, God, then what this dude, being the preacher, is telling me, it must be real. And there's one thing for absolute sure that I don't want to do. I don't want to go to the hell that he just told me about. So I'm asking you to save me so that I have a fire insurance plan. And that's exactly my prayer of salvation. And I got hit with, it was like a whammy. I can't even explain. I mean, all of a sudden, the flowers, the trees, everything was real and illuminated. And I was like this in euphoric, it was like a euphoric thing like I had never experienced ever. And so, and it hasn't went away. And that was over 50 years ago.
Dan, let me ask you, so you did time, you took a plea, but you weren't a criminal. You weren't doing devious criminal activity.
No, and you can go back and look at the properties and everything that they clawed back and they took. There was no diamond rings. There was no houses. There was no yachts. There was no airplanes. There was no hidden money anywhere. And it was just one of those situations that we got in trouble with the SEC because we didn't have a proper notification on a document. Like a lot of the people that I was in prison with through this big thing where the real estate went down, it was just because they had their signature on a document and they were there because they conspired and they didn't even know they conspired. Well, this went on and on and on and on. And then it come to turn out that my partner, who was a judge in Idaho, and he had 2 doctorates in law, he was keeping journals. And in those journals, the FBI, not the CIA, but the FBI found these journals. And I got a call on June 6th of 2007 from my attorney, said, do you know anything about journals? And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, they've got Judge Bry's journals, and in those journals are some very, very incriminating things, not to incriminate you, but he wrote things of all the things that he was doing on special missions, a lot like the guy who started the Gong Show and the
Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry. Yeah. And that's
almost simultaneous to that. And so, we had the government had put a monitor in our business. We were doing business. They kept us in business because we were very large, employed a lot of people and worked with a lot of countries. But these journals came to light, and then all of a sudden it made it look like that we were working with, ISIS.
Okay. Yeah, that's so typical of our government. We're coming up on break, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. And thank you, Larry.
Welcome back to Voices from Afar. Tonight, this is our second half hour. I'd like to reiterate tonight we have as a special guest Larry Buck. He wrote a book called 7 Days in Hell. I was there. And right before break, we were talking about how he was, the books that he found with this judge that he was working with came to light, and that he was working for ISIS. And that was kind of interesting. So, Larry, could you kind of expound on that a little bit more? Because that just seems so ludicrous that could be true.
Well, we thought it was ludicrous too, but the journals really indicated a lot of the countries we were in, and we were in 116. But we had distributors that were like nearly 4,000 of them were of the Muslim faith. I mean, if you deal in there, they're always buying and selling things, and we were just selling them surplus goods. And but Homeland Security then placed us on the no-fly list as a potential terrorist, because some of the mosques that were holding these sales, supported Al-Qaeda and some of the more radical Islam-type religions. I had nothing against Muslims. I have a lot of good Muslim friends, and I'm trying to lead them all to Jesus. It might be dangerous nowadays, but anyway, that all came to light, and then finally my attorney called me and said, hey, look, there's just no way out of this. You guys are not going to trial. Judge Bry wanted to go to trial, and he said there's just no way. They're not going to allow this, and if you don't cut a deal, they're going to start going after your wives, your children, because we were a big family business, and then your board of directors, and all conspirating to support radical Islam. And so I talked with Judge Bry, and I explained this all to him, that I don't care how much you want to go to trial, they're not going to allow these journals to be public information. And my attorney told me right straight out, it will never happen. And so that's the way they put the hammer on you. And when you take a look at conspiracy, that's like the four of us. If we're sitting here talking about something and it's overheard by somebody and it's not something we should be talking about, all five of us then could go to prison for 10 years for conspiracy. We don't even have to do the time. All we got to do is talk about it. So
unfortunately, that's going to happen soon because they don't want people speaking the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So anyway, I started at 3. The government started at 10. They went I went to 5. They went to 7. And we finally agreed on 6 years in a prison camp. And we wrote this up 100% so that the judge had to abide by the written agreement. And if the judge, in our case, was a lady, she turned out to be one nice person, by the way. Anyway, if the judge denied it, see, a lot of times the government will make this deal with you and you get in front of the judge and they throw the book at you. And I had it written right in that if they didn't take the 6 years to a prison camp, then the deal was off and we had to start all over again. So fortunately, I never had any negative. 473 people wrote letters to the judge, basically exonerating me. But it was just one of those deals. They wanted me to plead out. At one time, and I know we're getting off the story here, but this is a good story too. We were, in the state of Pennsylvania, charged us with running a pyramid scheme. We weren't running any pyramid scheme, and the federal court, they came out, looked at us. We went to trial. The judge threw it out, and that's actually where all our troubles began, because the prosecuting attorney for that state's best friend was the head of the SEC in the District of Atlanta, Georgia. And so he said, you need to, and I got what, this is the funniest darn thing in the world. I got this, looked like a phone book in the mail that said informal investigation. This was so informal, they wanted to know how many toes I had. I mean, it was like 380 pages, informal.
They wanted you bad.
Well, we were running not only our business, but we were in conjunction with MasterCard. We was doing an international banking. We were paying high interest, and that's probably what really got us in trouble, because we actually paid the interest. We bought the merchandise, sold it. We paid the interest worth the sales. So it wasn't that I was getting money from Joe and giving it to Jake, and then getting money from Harry and giving that to Jake. That, how a Ponzi scheme. So we weren't even there. There was nothing to do with that at all. But it came down to, you either cut a deal or we're going after your family. And so they wanted to charge me with fraud. Well, I didn't defraud anybody, and I wouldn't do that. So we finally came down and agreed on, of all things, 1 count of money laundering. 1 count. Now, our indictment was 28 counts.
And yeah, we did skip over exactly what was your business.
Okay, we bought and sold. I actually started this business when 9/11 happened. I was working. I bought and sold on eBay. I was one of the big stars of eBay, and 9/11 happened, and we were living in Divide, Colorado at the time, and we were isolated because when 9/11 happened, you couldn't mail anything, you couldn't ship anything. You'd go and be in a quarantine, for 6 or 7 weeks at a time. So I localized my eBay business, and we started buying from garage sales, and then we would go out and delivering, and then as things happened, that just evolved. We started a company called BuckTV.com, started doing auctions online, on air, and evolved this into the global business. And how we got into the global business in banking is I was working with people like in Mexico and India, in China, in Vietnam, and you'd have to pay these people. I would have a big honcho. They called him honchos. He was like a foreman, and he would be in charge of the material. We'd have people making these crafts, and making things, and then he would fill up the container, and then they would send individual bills. And so MasterCard and us set it up to where each one of those people had a MasterCard. We could pay in U.S. funds. They would go to their ATM and pull it out in whatever funds they were. And that's how my banking business actually started, as a quirk to facilitate being able to pay some people. In fact, in India, they wanted paid in gold. And so we had set up with those people that bought and sold gold at the time. And so it was an evolvement in things, and we evolved from one little 500 square foot warehouse to when we finally had to turn it all over to the government. We had 134,000 square feet of warehouse filled wall to wall to wall with goods. And it was really funny too when the Grassmick, Mr. Grassmick, who took over our business. I'll tell you another one. How our monitor had cut a deal that if our business went bankrupt or went down or was closed, he got to take over the business. Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest to have your own monitor be your receiver? Unbelievable.
Our government does that stuff all the time.
No.
He wrote the judge and said they would have to pay to have this hauled off to the dump. And then the minute that he owned it all, it became Walmart on steroids. He made commercials walking through our warehouses.
I see the problem is you were competition for the upcoming Amazon, which is tied into just about everything and everybody.
Well, I don't know that we got that big, but we were stepping on the banking toes because we were doing international banking and paying a lot. We were paying 2.5% to 5% interest per month. Nobody does that. But we had the money to do that, and that gave us unlimited buying power because people were putting money in. We were buying it. It was all backed up by either merchandise or property. So, I mean, it was a very legitimate system.
Yeah, but the government couldn't figure out a way to get more money from you. Somehow they had to bring you down.
Well, it's just one of those unfortunate things. I look at it in retrospect as this was a timeout. God wanted me to take a timeout, and so I got my timeout. And out of that timeout, my granddaughter, who you're going to be able to visit with in just a few minutes, whenever you say, she got saved. We've affected the entire prison ministry in the state of Idaho, and then we've started the healthresourcecenter.com. Pretty soon we will have that resource center operation in over 400 major cities. And when you take a look at that, people say, well, you just got another Google. No, just go on to Google in your area and ask if you can get free baby supplies or if somebody has free diapers. You'll go through six or seven pages of advertisement before you ever get anything that a church is sponsoring. Well, what we do is we go through into a community and find out all of the resources that are available, from food, from people needing a ride to doctor. You can go on and look at helpsresourcecenter.com and it concisely puts it in your area so you can get immediate help. We are so popular in the state of Idaho that on the Idaho State Prison website, under their mentor program, we are listed as a resource. We're the second resource listed. Under the unemployment office here, we are a resource. The welfare operation we're listed because people can go in and be able to get help. It doesn't matter who you are if you need help. But mainly we work with veterans. We do resumes for people. We have the book prison ministry. We have homeless. Homeless people do get a lot of food and all of that. But we found out in the homeless industry that homeless communities are set up with a mayor. They usually have a tablet or a smartphone. And so we found out that that they needed more of the medical stuff, like for handling flus, the women items, toilet paper, and a lot of the homeless community has pets, and we would get pet foods, and we have these packages that we put together in baskets and we deliver them and to the community. So Helps Resources is not only an internet ministry, it localizes locally. And that all came from my going to prison, because I started the Helps ministry in prison. Now, you'll get a kick out of this. Again, we're getting off of the book, but in prison, when you show up there, if you don't have money, you don't exist. You just don't exist in prison. You have to have money. And when you show up, they give you usually things from United Airlines with that little razor and that little tiny toothbrush, and little tiny and so we put together a donation system to where we had almost like the old welcome wagon community. When some new guy would come in, we would have a real shampoo and real soap and real razors and a toothbrush and all of the necessities. Plus then as people were leaving, they would let us have their, what was called grays. After hours, you can use your, uniforms. It is like, sweatpants and sweatshirts and tennis shoes. And so the people leaving would leave us that stuff. We had connections in the laundry. We'd get them laundered and all sizes. And so, people would come in that were totally, they didn't have any money. They were like homeless, man. And they could have been big drug dealers, but they didn't have a dime. And so an average pair of shoes that you have to buy if you want to use the gym is like $65 for the Nike type shoes. So we started this ministry. And by the way, 8 years later, this ministry is still going on in the Florence prison camp. It just passes from one person, and the guards were real nice. They'd give us these storage lockers, which was illegal for you to have underneath your bed. And they would give us these storage lockers and make that little room. And your cell is not really a cell. It's like a dormitory in a prison camp. And it's and you have two beds, one on each side of the wall, and two lockers. And it's like an 8x10. But underneath those beds, we could keep these storage, and they would make them off limits, because we were a big help to the guard society there. And that's where this ministry of Helps all happened, and then that's how the book evolved.
And definitely, God stopped your addiction for the Billionaires Club dead in its tracks, correct? And he sent you on a ministry that I'm just honored to have you on my show this evening, sir. You are a saint, Larry Buck Hunter.
You know, the interesting thing about this whole thing is I laugh about this. I was a Christian. I gave away things. I helped people with cars. I bought people's houses. I did a lot of things for people, but they were all on my terms. When I got out of prison, I no longer had the disease of trying to become a billionaire. You know, there was a line in a movie that says, give a man $100 million and you make him a frustrated billionaire. Well, we were at like 250 million, so we were pretty frustrated. But I don't have that disease anymore.
For sure. Do you see the gifts of heaven coming your way? So tell us a little bit about your granddaughter, and we'll bring her in the last hour for a little chat. She's an amazing person herself.
I want to tell the audience right now, you're in for a treat. My granddaughter, she's my first, I have several grandchildren. She was the first grandchild. And she's a genius, and she got involved in drugs at an early age and running with gangs and learned how to use the internet and how to steal people's identity. And that went all to buying and selling drugs. And then she got into the witchcraft business. And then she finally ended up in prison. Then she got out of prison. Then she went back to prison, and it all stemmed around basically addictions, like you were talking about addictions. Well, in her last stay, now she tried suicide several times, but her last time, it was bad. She was running a big ring, running with bikers. She was in, I think it was Reno, Nevada, and they threw her out of a car going 50 miles an hour, and she called me from a park, and we were just praying that she would get picked up so that at least we knew she'd be safe. And there was people trying to do her in, and actually she was on this same thing about maybe if I get back to jail, I'll make it. And she eventually got back here to Boise and ended up in the Ada County jail. And then she got so depressed because, you know, when you start going down from the uppers to the downers and evil living in your spirit, she's tried to hang herself in the county jail. They found her, and she called me, I think it was the next day, and I told her that the only way out was Jesus Christ, and she knows me. And so I asked her if she wanted to accept Jesus, and I'm sure she'll tell you this. She did it almost like the same way I did, as a joke. I'll just make Grandpa happy and I'll just pray this prayer. Well, she made Grandpa real happy. She prayed the prayer and zappo. She got zapped, and within 6 months' time, the total Ada County jail was turned around. She had ministers that had doctorate degrees in theology coming to visit her because, again, she's got a great mind, and she memorized almost the entire Bible and all of the hard questions of the Bible, and was leading these girls left and right. And that ministry now, 3 years later, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of girls and now men that has come to know Jesus Christ because this gal got saved. And she's going to tell you that story. But before she got saved, she'd been in and out of the prison system for 13 full years. She became a high priestess of the Wiccans, and actually forced the prison libraries through law and through that you had to treat everybody equal. They had to buy devil worshiping and Wiccan books and put them in the religious library because the law said so. And she made a lot of these people really angry, and now they can't believe that she's on the other side delivering them books and talking to them, and they're calling her and texting her, and now she's got opened up the men's prison here. She's got the Helps resource on kiosks, so they don't have to mail us anymore. They can go through some of the electronics to ask for books, and it's just an interesting story. So the audience is going to have a real treat when she gets on the air.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was going to ask you, I went blank. Star, do you have anything? You know, that happens. We were discussing that earlier.
Larry,
Just go blank.
can we get the links and stuff to these websites and such as you've been discussing, so we can put them in the chat room? And if you can put them into our Skype chat, we can also make sure Bill will be able to get them up on the.
When Andrea takes over, then I'll get on the chat and I'll put all that on the chat, and I'll chat with you while you folks are interviewing Andrea.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I'll get it all there for you, and also I'll give my book away to your audience free, totally free. Most of the time I just go on Amazon and have it directly shipped.
That is so awesome. Yes.
God bless you. A question. The time, I know we were discussing this before the on-air call, but your time in hell, we had asked you how long it was in physical time. And if you could we've got a couple minutes left, if you want to go into that whole time frame of your trip to hell.
Well, when the angel tapped me on the shoulder, and that's really what happened, and told me that my prayer had been granted, and that I'm calling him a he, would accompany me, and I was going to experience hell for myself. That was like at 1:00 a.m., and then a reveille in the prison is at 6 a.m. So I was there from 1 a.m. till 6 a.m. And when I actually had to be awoken, it took me hours to shake this off. I actually still thought I was there.
Wow. So having had similar experiences when you're out of body, and I believe by what you're describing, your physical experiences, you did have an out of body experience, because normally when we come back into it, we have to ground, meaning we have to eat. We need to like physically touch things to like really get our spirit and our body back in sync with each other. I've had days where I've walked around, I've gone to work, and I've told people that I feel like I am beside myself, like walking around not totally back in. So I can understand the whole not being totally back into your body. It does take a bit to get in sync with your physical vibration again. So that's fascinating. So it was about 5 hours, and you experienced 7 days in hell. And yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
The book is an easy read, and everything in there is backed up scripturally. It's not my imagination.
Yeah, I asked you, I have 2 book covers on the promo banner I did for the show, and I asked you which one was correct, and you explained that and your second book.
Yeah, the first book had the devil, and several of the pastors in churches actually wrote me or called me, sometimes actually cussed me out, not with cuss words, but with amplification in their voice. It was like, get this the hell out of our church, and wanted me to change the cover because it was just too scary. And so then I changed it with the bridge, the stairway to hell. And then several of the churches and the prisons adapted this as a Bible study, and I had the second book as a Bible study, but they wanted me to combine it into one book. So in last April, it was republished with a new cover, and now it's a 278 book, with book 1 being the story and book 2 the Bible study, and the Bible study correlates to every page. It has the scriptures and everything. So you can go page by page and do a Bible study and have a good comprehension of that hell really is real, and it's not some speculative place that the Bible talks about. It's a real place the Bible talks about.
And maybe a little later you can share your experience in heaven, because we've had several guests who have had the afterlife experiences, the after-death experience, where you are actually dead. We do know that it's not a near-death experience, that it is actually death and the life that continues after it.
Well, I was there, and I may even write a book. There's so many books about it, I just didn't think that I needed to, but it's a real place, and it really is real, and it will be a very enjoyable place to be.
That's wonderful. And as I said, I don't wish hell on anybody, but there are a lot of people that do deserve to be where you were for eternity.
Well, just keep this sentence train clear. You keep discussing hell, and then you just said it's the place where I want to be, so it's heaven. And we got a break, guys. We'll be back in 3 minutes with more, and we'll have his granddaughter on also. Welcome back, everyone, to Voices from Afar. I almost missed my go there. We have been talking to Larry Buckhunter and his granddaughter, who this has been the most uplifting, inspirational, happy, positive show. And right at the end there, she was talking about the miracles that occurred while she was going through her court processes, and the words came to me, when in your heart God resides, the devil has to step aside. And so all the plans that, we have laid before us by following our own way and following, a dark path per se, all that gets wiped away. When you give to God, love is the answer. When you give your heart to God, it makes a new way. It makes a new way. With God, all things are possible and miracles happen. And the evidence in these people's lives and even in my own life is testimony to that. You cannot tell me God isn't real. You can't tell me ghosts aren't real. You can't tell me a lot of things aren't real because I have seen and experienced for myself. Everyone has to for themselves. I agree. But Barry, you have some amazing books out and we've discussed them somewhat, but we really want to get them out there. And we were discussing earlier that you were saying you were going to give them away, and we were going like, okay, how? What do we do? So tell us about your books and where we can get them and how those listening can get it.
You just email helpsresourcecenter@gmail.com and put book request, and then Andrea will see to it. We'll mail them out right from here, or I'll go on Amazon and mail them. And
do we need a TFR password or special code? Voice from Afar.
No one will know but our audience the
Right.
Gmail address, and that Gmail address again was
healthresourcecenter@gmail.com. The whole world knows that address. Just Google it. So, and on for Kindle readers, you can just go on Amazon and download. I don't charge for Kindle. It's totally free.
awesome.
Thank you.
So either way, or if they want hard copy, and then also if somebody wants Andrea and I and my wife Mary, I also play guitar. I write songs. I was a rock and roll star in the 60s, and we'd be more than happy to come and talk to people about the book and the Health Resource Center. Here's what I want to say to both of you and to our audience. You guys may not know this, and people don't really get this, but on the average, every second, 2 people die. That's 107 people on average a minute worldwide. 55 million people make that journey, by the way. And they're either going to go one way or the other. It's either going to be, heaven or hell, period.
I've got a question. I wanted to, actually it was more of a thought, I guess, but when you were playing that sound earlier that you had helped get together to recreate the sound you remember hearing in hell, I heard a lot of machinery in there. And so the words that came to my mind were fear factory, because you went on to describe all the fear and knowing how the negative entities on this planet right now feed off of fear. It just is a fear factory. That's
and I had the same thought, similar, because I thought,
wow,
this is hell on an industrial scale. That's what I thought.
Boy, you guys have given me a new phrase to coin. Thank you. Praise the Lord. That's great.
Isn't that great?
Mm.
It was.
But that also made all the sense in the world to me, because, hell is our greatest fears, but at the same time, fear supposedly is what feeds the dark. And so what better place to capture souls is in a place where they're going to have eternal fear, which is like an endless source of soul energy on the bad scale.
Well, see, in this life, I'm a very positive person. I took PMA to its up. I studied it. And, I had a saying, every minute of every hour of every day and in every way, I am rapidly getting better and better and better, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, and socially. I've probably said that 2 million times. I could not get those words to come out of my mouth. I tried every way I could to have a positive thought. I could not get one positive thought to come out, only fear. And it just, my mind, did you ever get so scared in this life to where your brain felt like it was on fire?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it felt, only multiply that. The experience, it just hurt. It hurt. and and being swallowed up in total darkness and total fear, and and I could hear all those faint sounds of, like I said earlier, people asking for help, but no help coming, and the stench and the thick smoke, and I was clawing at the lid my mind was bursting in fear and pain, and I kept asking God to help me. And one of the demons just came out and screeched with this screech that you hear on some of these horror movies. Your God ain't here. We're your gods now. And little worms and spiders, which I just absolutely despise. Spiders and worms and bugs. And they were crawling all over me in this coffin. And there was one particular bug that looked like a lightning bug, only it bit. And it was just like a little demon. And these little bugs would dip and they'd burrowed into my skin, and then they would laugh, and they just laugh and say, "Where's your God now? Where is your God now?" That type of ugly, ugly laughter. And it just, you asked me to tell you about it. I'm telling you, I mean, it was a constant
demonic.
And no help, only fear. And then all of that would just pop back in your mind. And that was only like the first 2 or 3 days. And,
well, Lord, let me ask you, did you ever cry out with the name of Jesus?
Yeah, but it wouldn't come out of your mouth.
Wow.
And that one demon that was really harassing me said, "There ain't no Jesus here. There's no Jesus here."
So once you're there, you're there. There ain't no out.
I went in my book, I put little pictures of illustrations of what some of these things look like. And I think people will really get a kick out of just seeing the pictures. But I can tell you, hell is not a party. That's what I used to say. That was my slogan. All my buddies will be there and we'll just have one hell of a party. Well, hell ain't no party.
Well, didn't Jesus go to hell for 3 days?
Yes.
He kicked their butt down there. They just don't want to remember. He came down there. He knows all about them.
He took the keys of death and sin and that place for 3 days. He took his blood. When you understand, someday when we have more time, because we'll talk about what a blood covenant is. I'm part Cherokee Indian. I grew up as a Catholic, and that's how come you could, and I have nothing wrong with the Catholic Church. I went to this Catholic school, and I was in the state of Oregon. I was the first guy that ever got the electric paddle. They had a paddle that looked like a beaver tail, and they'd strap you in there and turn that machine on and go.
Oh, my God.
I was the first one.
Holy crap, they tased you.
Lord, electrical spanking paddle. Heard it all now.
Gotta love the Catholics.
Anyway. I tell you, they're creative.
And then the father that ran the school, he had what he called the Board of Education, and his board was a paddle with holes in it. So, man, when he whapped you across the buns, it caused little blisters. Yep.
It's to cut down on wind resistance, and I had a band teacher that had one of those, but I was in Catholic school till the 5th grade, and the old put your hands out and the nun would hit you with her ruler. Mm-hmm. Well, I had a nun that had a brass ruler.
Ooh. Ouch.
Yeah, it's Catholic. Not to knock Catholics, but the Pope, the head of the Catholics, being Antichrist himself. And I don't like even using the word Christianity or Christian or Catholic. I'm simply a follower of Christ. There's no religion involved in it at all.
Well, one of the most interesting things is, like with the Catholic Church and even the LDS Church, that the people in the pew don't understand the hierarchy of the doctrine. And when they talk about Jesus, they're talking about the same Jesus you and I are. It's the hierarchy that doesn't. And if you go through Catholic catechism, when you finish that catechism class, you have to say a prayer that evokes, becoming a Christian. And that's why, again, the hierarchy is one thing. The normal person within the church system. I know a tremendous amount of people that are born again that are attending the LDS church because they don't know any better. They like the family values. They don't know what I know because I studied every cult, by the way, every religious cult. Dr. Walter Martin was my teacher, and he's passed away now. And Donald C. Barnhouse. By the way, how would you like to have the name Donald C. Barnhouse? And he was a professor of theology, and his favorite saying when I was underneath him was, "You gotta get the hay out of the barn loft and on the floor where the cows can eat it." That's appropriate. Your name is Donald C. Barnhouse.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you and my audience. My pineal gland used to be what it's supposed to be at the age of 21. I'm now 63, and it has gone completely dead up until a little earlier in this conversation. I mean, in new age talk, my pineal gland has awakened. This is such an incredible experience, sir, and I want to thank you.
By his stripes we are healed. He bore all of our sicknesses and illnesses and anything that has to do mentally, spiritually, or physically. It's at our availability. And I had February 2nd, Groundhog Day. I was sitting, I thought I bent over because I was a really big man, and I literally caused a blood clot that went into my heart. I was within minutes of death when I got to the VA. They sent me right over to the cardiacs. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and a miracle happened there. They actually was able to. I was having an aneurysm from this blood clot, and the doctor that I got, the first day I was in the surgery for nearly 12 hours, and they couldn't get this stent in, and so they took me back to my room. The doctor went home. He come and pounded on my bed at 6 a.m. and he said, "I went home to be with my wife and family, and all I could think about was you." And he said, "I prayed and I asked God to help me fix," because he said this is the number one stent doctor in the United States, by the way, of putting stents in. "I have a peculiar heart. The blood vessels in my heart are backwards to normal hearts. Only 1% of the 7 billion people on this earth have that anomaly." And so God showed him how to go in through my thigh instead of my wrist, but through my thigh and up and through the carotid artery in my neck and down. And he was able to make this 90-degree turn. And he said, "I'll have you in and out of surgery in less than 90 minutes if you'll give me the okay," because God showed me how to do this. I was in and out of surgery. That was on a Saturday afternoon, the Super Bowl, next morning, and they let me go home. I walked out of that hospital because that man performed this miracle. And I went in the hospital at 445 pounds, and now since then I'm down to 380. And before this year's out, I'll be at 300. And before next year's out, I'll be at 200.
Wow.
Praise God. Amen, brother.
I have officially lost count of the miracles that have been mentioned in this show now.
Right.
That's awesome.
God used that man's hands to heal you because he had a big job for you to do.
That is absolutely correct. And in 1996, I had a series of strokes. I stressed myself out. Let me tell you what stress will do. I got so stressful because I dropped $7 million in the month of December. I had a product that even Bill Clinton endorsed. That would stop Christmas trees from exploding. And we were in all of these Home Depots and nobody bought my product. Only when there was a Christmas tree fire would they buy, and I dropped $7 million, and I got so stressed out that the stress caused my blood pressure to go to like 220 over 210. So and I was actually pushing blood out of my skin, and I had a stroke. And then I recovered from that, had an aneurysm, then another one, and then the final one, my eardrum blew out. Otherwise, it had blew my brain out. And the doctors proved that. If it hadn't, I was squirting blood out my ear onto the wall. And my wife, we're married 51 years now, my wife got so angry at my negative attitude that she told me, she came around, she said, either get on with living or get on with dying. But I'm not going down to the bowling alley and work as a waitress anymore and come home and change your dirty, nasty pants. And she said, I was on 13 different medications at the time, and two of them were euphoric ones like Xanax. She actually took my gun out. She said, if I pointed this gun at me, you'd probably laugh. She swears to this day she didn't do that. But I had a Clint Eastwood 44 Magnum signed by him. And she pulled it out and cocked the trigger, and that sucker was loaded. And I stuck my finger in the barrel and laughed. She went to work. I swear to you, I crawled out to my pickup. I got in my pickup. I drove from Boise, Idaho to Idaho Falls to a friend's house, and he put me up. I never came back to my ranch in Homedale, Idaho. I healed miraculously. My whole right side of my face was like a droopy dog, and God healed me of that. I went on to build a multi-million-dollar business in network marketing with a company called Life Plus. I was doing television and radio. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee because some of my best friends there, I was doing 2 radio shows at the time, one with Talk America, one in the morning for 3 hours and 6 hours at night. And so I moved to Nashville. So I'd have all these stars that with the Nashville crowd because they all loved me because I played their music. And I never went home, and my wife had to sell our ranch and pack up and come to I bought an 18-acre place in Greenbrier, and he healed me of that completely and thoroughly. And from there, we moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, of where I became the #1 nighttime host on a show called The Night Shift that emanated from the Gold Coast Casino, the main ballroom. I was on from 11 p.m. till 3 a.m. every morning, and then Cable One or Cox Cable started carrying it. I became the #1 nighttime show. Another company that was doing the radio background for the television, for the Weather Channel and the Gossip Channel and the ad channels. I was in 21 million homes with the audio, building that. So I was able to talk about God all the time. And the lady that was married to Alan Ludden, she's 90 years old or almost 100 now?
Betty White.
Yeah. Betty White, right? Alan had died about that time, and she was lonely. And so she started listening to my show. And then every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Betty White would call in and do a 4-hour show with me as my co-host.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
And she loves animals. I love
Yeah,
her. She's
oh,
an
it was
animal advocate.
fantastic. She was just a kick in the pants to work with. And it was free. And then all of these stars that I interviewed, I own all of those tapes. I have them here. I'm going to go through. I mean, I interviewed everybody. 99% of the people on the strip was on my show. The only people that wouldn't come on my show was Penn and Teller.
Says
That says everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speaking of a radio show, you have a radio station, and you told me that when I'm going to send you an edited archive of this show, and you said that you would play it on your show.
Yes,
your
I
radio.
will.
Tell
And
us about your radio station.
it's called KHelp, KHLP.rocks. We also have an app. You can go on the Play Store and just put in KHLP Rocks and download the app. It's totally free. It's 24/7 music's playing, and I have it's a very special station. We can go on live and then see this show, your show. I'll start rerunning it, and it will tweet out to the entire audience that we're online or on air. And so anybody can download that. It's totally free. KHLP.rocks, and you can go on. I'm on the internet. Have our www.khlp.rocks, and I do a lot of shows that for doing. I like doing a lot of sentimental stuff like Delilah does.
Oh yeah.
What we're doing on this show right now, just talking with people, and I do a show called Here Comes the Night, because I found out that's when people are the loneliest, and that's when most people commit suicide. And I've had so many neat stories I could tell you about doing the night shift and Here Comes the Night, and I just love doing that.
And we have about 3 minutes left. I am enamored and in awe of your life and what God has done for you, sir.
Amen.
You've been a blessing to me. Thank you.
Really.
Well, you guys have all been a blessing to me, and that reminds me of Bette Midler when she did that show on beaches, when she did the automation show where she came out, and all the demons were there. Did any of you see the movie Beaches?
Yes.
It's been a while.
Yes. Yeah.
She did that automation and about automation. When you guys were saying that, I was just visualizing, because that's what I felt like. I felt like I was on a boat like in the Navy. That's why you hear that mechanical hum, because I was hearing that buzz all the time. So I did the best I could to recreate what my mind had heard.
Boy, you did well.
Yeah.
It gives you chills.
Certainly does.
Well,
We got to have you back soon. Got so much more to talk about.
Guys, please email me, and Joy, especially when we get up there. I do want to meet you, and then maybe I can have you meet Pastor Cecil. I do his daily blogs, and we've got over 40,000 people now through SoundCloud and Blogspot that does his daily devotional and listens to him read the Bible.
Definitely.
On a daily basis.
Yes, definitely. Put that on the calendar.
Well, thank you, guys.
You're so very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Is there any other websites, email, book addresses you want to give out one last time in a minute?
No, just contact you guys. You can forward it to me, or helpsresourcecenter@gmail.com. Put book request, Buck's book, and then Andrea's book. In fact, you guys, if you'll send me an email, I'll send you a draft copy of Andrea's. The first 15 chapters of Andrea's book will make a hair stand on your neck.
Well, she wrote 3 books, right? You tell us the name of the first 2.
Well, they're not published yet. She wrote them in prison and sold them to me in longhand. So we're having to.
Wow.
But I've got her first one just about all completed, and within a month it'll actually be in book form.
Wow.
So you have your own publishing company, and what is that for any aspiring authors?
Econo, it's ECONO, ONOpublishing.com. I sent you the link. And any pastors out there, or like yourself, you said you had a book that you wanted. I'll publish it for you free. Put it in your name. Put it on Amazon and on CreateSpace. And I use CreateSpace, but also use Amazon. And there's another one out there, and then those all get infiltrated into all the major bookstores.
Wow. I have a book too I could send you.
All you have to do is send it to me in Microsoft, and then I'll get it all formatted, send it back. Then we do the publisher, thing, and talk back and forth, and I try to make it personal. So when I've done like 9 books for Pastor Cecil.
Okay, we have about 15 seconds left, and I want to thank God for Nicole, and I'm going to write her a lovely letter. She's the publicist that publicizes Falari, and oh my God,
Really?
love you all, and we'll be back on Wednesday.
I love you, world.
Take care. See you Wednesday.
Bye-bye, Larry.